I'm going to tell you something that the used truck industry does not want you to hear. There is a legal loophole that allows dealerships, real licensed dealerships, to sell you a flood-damaged truck with a clean title. Not a salvage title, not a rebuilt title, a clean title. And they are doing it right now. Trucks that sat underwater during hurricanes in Louisiana, Florida, and Texas are showing up on lots in Ohio, Colorado, and Arizona, looking like nothing ever happened to them. The paperwork checks out, the Carfax looks fine, the salesman smiles, and you drive home in a truck that's going to start falling apart within 2 years. I've been wrenching on trucks for over 30 years. F-150s, Silverados, Rams, Tundras. I've worked on all of them. I've pulled apart flood trucks that were sold as clean used vehicles, and I've watched good people get burned. I've seen this happen dozens of times. The people who got burned weren't stupid. They just didn't know what to look for. By the end of this video, you will. Here's what they don't want you to know. The process I'm about to describe is called VIN washing. It is not a black market operation. It is not some back alley hustle. It operates inside the law, or more accurately, it exploits the gaps between state laws. That's what makes it so dangerous. You think you're protected. You think the title system means something. But the system has holes in it, and there are people making very good money crawling through those holes. Let me break down exactly how VIN washing works. When a major flood event hits, a hurricane, a river overflow, a storm surge, thousands of vehicles get submerged. Insurance companies total those vehicles out. The owners get paid. The insurance company takes possession of the truck. Now the truck is supposed to get a salvage title. That title follows the vehicle and tells every future buyer that this truck was declared a total loss. That's the system working the way it's supposed to work. But here's where it goes sideways. The insurance company sells these totaled trucks at auction. That's legal and normal. A buyer, sometimes a dealer, sometimes a wholesaler, sometimes just a guy with a business license, purchases the flood truck at auction. In the state where the flood happened, that truck now has a salvage title. It's branded. It's marked. Selling it as a normal used vehicle in that state would be fraud. So they don't sell it there. They ship it to another state. Specifically, they ship it to a state that has weaker title branding laws. Kentucky has historically been one of these states. Mississippi too. Tennessee. The rules on what brands follow a title from state to state are not uniform across the country. Each state has its own laws, and some states will issue a new, clean title on a vehicle even when the vehicle had a salvage brand in another state. Once that new title is issued, the salvage history is gone. The truck is legally clean on paper. Then the truck gets shipped back out, often into a high-demand market in a state with strict consumer protections, and sold at nearly full retail value. The dealer may not even know the truck's history, or they do know and they're betting you won't find out. Either way, you're the one holding the bag. Now, I want to be clear about something. I'm not telling you this to scare you away from buying a used truck. Used trucks can be a great deal. I'm telling you this because knowledge is your protection. The people running this loophole are counting on buyers who don't know how to look. Today, you're going to learn how to look. The first thing you need to understand is that a VIN-washed flood truck will not announce itself. It has been cleaned up, detailed, sometimes repainted, sometimes given new carpet. The goal is to make it look and smell like nothing happened. And some of these trucks are done well enough that a casual inspection misses everything. But a flood truck cannot hide everything. Water gets into places that even the best detailer can't reach. And that's where you find the truth. Start with your nose before you ever open a door. Stand near the truck. Open the door slowly. Take a breath. A flood truck will often have a musty, damp, mildew smell even years after the event. That smell soaks into foam, into insulation, into seams. It can be masked temporarily with air fresheners or ozone treatments. But if you leave the truck sealed up in a parking lot on a hot day and then open the door, that smell often comes back. If a salesman offers to turn on the AC before you get in, or if the inside of the truck smells unusually perfumed, that's a flag worth noting. Next, you look at the carpet. Pull it back at the corners. Not in the middle, at the seams near the doors and at the edges near the seat mounts. Flood trucks accumulate silt and sediment in the seams. You might see a fine dirt line, a discoloration, or actual dried mud. New carpet on an older truck is also suspicious. Ask when the carpet was replaced and why. Factory carpet doesn't get replaced unless something happened to it. Look at the seat rails. The bolts that hold the seat tracks to the floor are a great place to check. On a clean truck, those bolt heads are factory finished, maybe a little dusty. On a flood truck, those bolts often show rust. Not heavy surface rust, more like the early orange tinge you get when bare metal gets wet and then dries. Check under the seats too. Run your finger along the underside of the seat frame. If you feel grit or see rust in spots where factory paint should still be intact, that tells you water was there. Pop the hood. I know most people barely look under the hood anymore, but this is where you find the flood line. A flood truck that sat in water deep enough to affect the engine bay will show water marks on unpainted metal surfaces. Look at the shock towers. Look at the firewall. Look at the frame rails where they're visible. You're looking for a horizontal line, a tide mark, where sediment or discoloration changes. On some trucks it's faint, on others it's obvious once you know what you're looking for. Check the electrical connectors under the hood. Pull back a wiring harness and look at the connectors. Floodwater drives corrosion into electrical connectors in a way that normal humidity never does. You might see green or white oxidation on connector pins. You might see the plastic housing on connectors that's slightly warped or discolored. These connectors are protected from rain by design. If they show water damage, something abnormal got to them. Look at the fuse boxes. There are usually at least two, one under the hood, one inside the cab. Open them up. The fuses and relays in a flood truck often show corrosion or discoloration. Sometimes fuses have been replaced because of electrical gremlins that showed up after the flooding. A mix of new and old fuses in a fuse box on a truck that's only supposed to have had routine maintenance. That's a flag. Check inside the headlights and taillights. Stand in front of the truck and look closely at the inside of the headlight assemblies. Lights are sealed, but they're not perfectly airtight. Flood water can get inside, and when it dries out, it leaves a residue on the lens or the reflector. You might also see fogging, a slight haziness on the inside of the lens that isn't condensation. That residue doesn't come from normal humidity. It comes from sediment-laden water getting trapped inside. Now let's talk about what happens after you buy a flood truck and the problems start showing up. Because this is why VIN washing is so destructive. The damage isn't always immediate. You might drive that truck for 6 months and think everything is fine. Then the electrical gremlins start. Intermittent warning lights. Windows at work sometimes and not other times. The radio cuts out. The power running boards stop working. The trailer brake controller starts throwing codes. These are all symptoms of corroded electrical connections that are slowly failing. Then the mechanical issues follow. Bearings that were marginally lubricated when the flood happened start wearing faster. Water that got into the transfer case or differential gets trapped in seams and accelerates wear. Rust that started inside frame rails grows from the inside out. By the time you can see it on the frame exterior, the damage is already significant. I've seen flood trucks with frames that looked okay from a distance, but were rusted through in key stress areas. That's not just expensive to fix, that's dangerous. The transmission is another concern. Modern automatic transmissions have electronic solenoids, pressure sensors, and a valve body full of tiny passages. Water intrusion into a transmission creates havoc even if the trans continues to shift normally for a while. The sludge that forms when water mixes with transmission fluid will eventually score the valve body or stick a solenoid. A transmission rebuild on a modern full-size truck will run you anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000, depending on the truck and the shop. Here's the part that really gets me. You've paid full market price for this truck. Let's say you paid $30,000 for a used F-150 or Silverado. You did everything right. You test drove it, the Carfax came back clean, the dealer seemed reputable. 2 years later, you've spent $4,000 or $5,000 in repairs chasing electrical problems. The truck is worth significantly less than you paid because the problems are mounting. And when you go to trade it in and the dealer puts it on a lift, he finds what you didn't, and suddenly the trade-in value drops hard. You're stuck. If you found this channel and you're watching right now before you make that next truck purchase, I'm glad you're here. This is exactly the kind of information that saves people real money. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button right now. I put out content specifically to help truck buyers protect themselves. New video every week. You're going to want to see what's coming. Now let me tell you about the databases you need to check before you ever buy a used truck. Most people have heard of Carfax. Carfax is useful, but it has a real limitation. It only reports what gets reported to it. If a state doesn't report flood damage to Carfax, or if the title wash happened before the flood event was recorded, Carfax may show a clean history. It can't show you information it never received. This is not a knock on Carfax. They're working with the data they have access to. But you need to understand the limitation. NIMVITIS is the National Motor Vehicle Title Information System. This is a federal database that all states are required to report to. It covers title brands, odometer readings, and total loss designations. You can access NIMVITIS data through approved providers. A search typically costs a few dollars. NIMVITIS data can sometimes catch a brand that Carfax missed because it draws from a different pool of state-reported information. Run both. They cost almost nothing compared to what you're protecting yourself from. AutoCheck is another report service. It uses data from Experian and draws from different auction records than Carfax. A truck that went through a Mannheim auction in the southeast after a hurricane may show up in AutoCheck's records in ways that Carfax wouldn't capture. Again, run multiple reports. Don't rely on just one. There are also flood map lookup services. The National Flood Insurance Program and FEMA maintain flood records. There are third-party services that cross-reference a vehicle's location history against flood event maps. If a truck spent time registered in Beaumont, Texas in September of 2017, that's right after Hurricane Harvey, that's information worth knowing. It doesn't prove the truck flooded, but it tells you to look harder. None of these database checks replace a physical inspection. I want to be very clear about that. They are part of your process, not the whole process. If anything in a database report raises a question, or if anything in your physical inspection raises a question, the right move is always to get the truck inspected by an independent mechanic before you buy it, not the dealership's mechanic. An independent shop that you find yourself, ideally one with a lift and someone who knows trucks. A pre-purchase inspection by a good mechanic will cost you somewhere between $100 and $200, depending on your market. On a used truck purchase, that's cheap insurance. A good mechanic doing a PPI specifically for flood damage will put the truck on a lift, look at every inch of the frame, pull seat bolts to check for rust, inspect electrical connections, check for watermarks in the engine bay, and tell you what they see. If the dealer won't let you take the truck to an independent shop for an inspection, walk away. That refusal tells you everything. Now let me give you the questions that make dishonest dealers nervous. These are questions that an honest dealer will answer without hesitation. A dealer hiding something will dodge, deflect, or get uncomfortable. Ask them directly. Ask, has this truck ever had a salvage, flood, or total loss title in any state? Watch their face when you say any state. An honest dealer says no and offers to show you documentation. A nervous dealer might say no, but immediately start talking about something else. Ask, can I see the vehicle's title history from the state it was originally registered in? If the truck was originally registered in Florida or Louisiana and was then retitled in Kentucky before coming to your state, that chain of registration should be visible. Honest dealers have no problem showing you this chain. Dealers hiding a title wash will often say they only have the current title. Ask, will you put in writing that this vehicle has never been declared a total loss by an insurance company? This is a simple request. An honest dealer should agree to include this in the purchase agreement. A dealer who suddenly has a reason they can't do that is a dealer you should walk away from. Ask, can I take the truck to an independent mechanic for a pre-purchase inspection before I commit? If the answer is anything other than yes, or if they put conditions on it that make it logistically impossible, take that as your answer. Ask, where was this truck when Hurricane Harvey or Hurricane Ian hit? Obviously, you'd use the relevant hurricane for the truck's history. If the truck was registered in an affected area during a flood event, you want to know. Again, an honest dealer will engage with the question. A dealer with something to hide will fumble. There's one more thing I want to tell you, and this is important. Some dealers who sell flood trucks don't actually know the full history of what they're selling. They bought the truck at auction, the title came back clean, and they genuinely believe they're selling a clean truck. The VIN wash system is designed to produce exactly this kind of deniability. So I'm not saying every dealer selling a flood truck is a crook. Some of them got fooled too. But that doesn't protect you. You're still the one who ends up with a truck full of problems. This is why your job is to protect yourself, not to trust the system, not to trust the title, not to trust the Carfax, to do your own due diligence. Look at the truck yourself, run multiple database checks, get an independent inspection, and ask the hard questions. The system has gaps. Your eyes and your questions are the best protection you have. I've watched good, hard-working people spend their savings on trucks that were supposed to be solid and turn out to be disasters. A rancher in West Texas who bought a Ram 1500 that spent time underwater in Louisiana. A contractor in Colorado who bought a Silverado that looked great but had a frame rotting from the inside. A young couple in Kansas who bought a used F-150 that started throwing electrical codes 6 months in and never really stopped. These aren't rare stories. I've heard dozens of them. Every one of them could have been avoided with the information you now have. The VIN washing loophole exists because title laws are set at the state level and they are not uniform. There have been federal efforts over the years to tighten the NMVTIS requirements and close some of these gaps. Progress has been slow. Lobbying from wholesale auction operators and used vehicle dealers has slowed legislative action. In the meantime, the loophole remains. Trucks keep getting washed. Buyers keep getting burned. What you can do right now today is share this video. Send it to someone who's shopping for a used truck. Post it to a forum. Drop it in a group chat. The more people who know how VIN washing works, the fewer people get burned. That's the whole point of this channel. Let me do a quick summary of everything we covered so you have it locked in. VIN washing is when a flood-damaged or totaled vehicle gets retitled in a state with looser branding laws, so the salvage history disappears. It is legal in the sense that it exploits gaps in state laws, not federal criminal statutes. The truck then gets sold as a clean title vehicle at near full retail value. To protect yourself, smell the interior before you get in and look for musty or mildew odor. Pull up the carpet at the seams and check for silt, mud lines, or water staining. Look at the seat rail bolts for rust. Check the electrical connectors in the engine bay for green or white corrosion. Look inside the headlights and taillights for residue or fogging. Check the fuse boxes for mixed new and old fuses or corrosion. Look at the frame for rust coming from the inside out. Run Carfax and AutoCheck together. Run an NMVTIS check through one of the approved providers. If the truck has registration history in a state that experienced a major flood event, research the timing. Get an independent pre-purchase inspection from a mechanic you find yourself, not one the dealer suggests. Ask the hard questions. Whether the truck has ever had a salvage, flood, or total loss title in any state, whether you can see the full title chain, whether the dealer will put the clean history in writing, and whether you can take the truck for an independent inspection. If anything feels off, a dealer who deflects, a Carfax that has gaps, a truck that smells wrong, rust in places it shouldn't be, trust that feeling. There are a lot of good used trucks out there. There are plenty of sellers who will let you inspect the truck properly and answer every question you ask. Don't settle for one that won't. I'm Wade Tucker. I've been doing this work for over 30 years, and I'm going to keep telling you what the industry doesn't want you to hear. Subscribe if you haven't already. Drop your questions in the comments. I read them and I answer them. And if you've ever been burned by a flood truck or know someone who was, share that story below. It helps other buyers know what to watch out for. Stay sharp when you're shopping. Don't let them wash one past you.